Let it be written in song that Din Djarin is accepting this foundling as his son. You are now Din Grogu, Mandalorian apprentice.
Hey, welcome back Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy. So let's talk about Season 3 of The Mandalorian. This season was weird. It had its highs, its lows, and some stuff that was just, well, that just didn't make sense. So we asked all of you to send us your plot holes and unanswered questions on my Twitter and our community page and on screencrush.com. So we're here to answer them as best we can. You ready, Doug? Doug, are you listening?
No, I'm on my phone.
Are you buying trampolines again?
Yes, I am buying 5 trampolines. I'm making a city. Oh, that's weird. It says I have no money, and now I have to go to jail and die in a pauper's grave.
Well, we're gonna miss you, Doug.
Life is tough on the inside, person.
I'm gonna miss that, dog. So let's do this. At Sailor Dark Jupiter says, how did Grogu catch up to rescue Din? I may have missed it, but I thought that he had escaped through the hole with the other Mandalorians. The troopers were right behind them the whole time, so where and when did he sneak off and go back for his dad? So this is one of those things that's not really a plot hole, it's just something that happens off screen. The other Mandalorians went through the tunnels to get to safety. I think that Grogu probably got to safety with them, but then turned back down a different tunnel to find his dad.
Well, then how did he find his dad?
Well, it's pretty obvious. They had a strong connection, so he used the Force. After all, Leia was able to pinpoint Luke's exact location in Empire.
Leia!
Doc, we've got to go back. I know where Luke is.
Caleb Peterson asks, what kept Gideon from intercepting Mando and Grogu before they eliminated all his precious clones? Well, first of all, he didn't know they were going to find his clones. R5 had scomped into the system, so I'm pretty sure he deactivated all the security cameras and perimeter alarms. But I'm also going to chalk this up to good old-fashioned villain arrogance. Remember, Gideon only left 2 guards on Din, and he had just sent his fleet to wipe out all the Mandalorians. He thought he had already won the day, and he was probably going off to watch the video of Pershing getting his mind wiped by Kane. Heavy spoilers even compared this moment to this.
We'll shoot them together. It'll be fun. Bang! Dead. Done.
Are you ever going to get me out of jail? I mean, it's really scary.
Along those same lines, Josh Millman on Twitter asks, opening locked Imperial doors, impossible hacking into and sabotaging an Imperial cloning lab? Give me 5 seconds. I mean, Josh, is this your first time watching Star Wars? R2-D2 mapped out the entirety of a station the size of a moon to find Leia, like, immediately. Lance Line on Twitter pointed out that a piece of glass prevented Grogu from using the Force. Now, I think what you're talking about here is when Din was captured when he was separated from Grogu. Presumably, Grogu could have fought the guards through this glass or choked Gideon. But this got me wondering if maybe it is harder to connect to the Force through objects, or at least to maintain a physical connection to the Force when a physical object is in the way. At any rate, Grogu is still a novice Force user. I don't think he choked Gideon here because, after training with Luke, we mostly see him using the Force for defense, like pulling weapons out of the way during Din's fight with the Praetorian Guards. But Corbin Red on Twitter here disagrees with me, saying, how did Grogu at the end somehow have ridiculously strong Jedi powers and barely collapse afterwards? Is he already more powerful than Yoda? First of all, he pulled the same fire bubble trick in Season 1. Granted, there was a lot less fire then. He did also train with Luke since then and hone his Jedi abilities. Favreau even implied at one point that he's been with Luke for years, which the timeline's weird. I also think that him facing the trauma of Order 66 would have helped him to finally unlock the greater connection he has to the Force. We saw Cal Kestis do the same thing in Fallen Order. After confronting the death of his master and reliving his own Order 66 experience, Cal is way more powerful in the game. So no, he's not more powerful than Yoda. Silly question.
Hello, person.
Doug, you're back from debtor's prison.
Yep, serving a few years goes a lot faster when you're a little dog.
Well, buddy, I gotta tell you, if you don't want to be broke all the time, then you should really use the mobile app Rocket Money.
Or what's Rocket Money?
Rocket Money helps you to save more and spend less. It is an easy-to-use personal finance manager that lets you manage all your subscriptions, lower your bills, check your credit score, and plan for your financial future.
Wow, all that in just one app?
Yes, my friend, and it is very easy to use. I input my financial details and I found out that I was spending $40 a month on subscription services that I had totally forgotten about. Like, for this job, I had to research a movie that was on Showtime, so I signed up for a free trial, totally forgot about it, till Rocket Money showed me I was still paying that bill. Plus, and this is my favorite part, they can negotiate your bills to lower their cost. They saved me 20% on my internet bill. So I upgraded to premium and Rocket Money paid for itself right away. That's why more than 3.4 million members trust Rocket Money to help them with their finances.
Oh, okay, so I can save money so I can spend money.
Nope, not at all, Doug. Rocket Money helps you plan out a budget for yourself and it lets you know when you have exceeded that budget. And with Rocket Money 20 Premium, you get free credit score checks, unlimited budgeting, and tons of other features that will help you invest in your future. So to try it out, head to rocketmoney.com/screencrush or click the link in the description below or click this QR code. Now back to what I was saying. No random number letters has a great question. How could Moff Gideon break the Darksaber when it is mentioned in the Book of Boba Fett that its hilt is made of a high quality of Beskar?
The hilt is of a quality of Beskar I have never seen before.
Now, I am not an expert on the yield strength of imaginary metals, but his suit is also made from Beskar, and it's not just regular Mandalorian armor. Listen.
Force. And incorporating it in...
That sucker is basically wearing a Beskar Iron Man suit that augments his strength. It's why he's able to toss everybody around during fights. So there are 4 different kinds of strength in metals: compressive, tensile, impact, and yield. In this case, we're interested in yield strength, which is how well a material resists deformation or how much strength it takes to bend it, like bending the Darksaber. Now, carbon steel has the highest yield strength of any metal on Earth of 260 megapascals, or 3,820 pounds per square inch. In the comics, Tony Stark can punch at 380 miles an hour or 40,000 newtons, which converts to a 9,000 psi. So if Tony's Iron Man suit were made of Beskar, he could easily bend the Beskar Darksaber. Not to mention the impact strength of Beskar would provide additional leverage to bend the saber.
Yes, science!
Now, we're not sure if the Kyber crystal in the Darksaber is broken or not, but it would be pretty cool if a Sith stole it, corrupted it, and then made a red Darksaber.
Now that was a lot.
Yeah, man, read it. A Vermilion Squad says, the Darksaber, are there plans to repair it, or was this just to wash my hands of the whole mythos we've been following for generations? Now, I don't think the season did a very good job of explaining this, but the blind worship of the Darksaber was not a good thing. It created Mandalorian civil wars that destroyed the planet. So the Darksaber's destruction symbolizes a new Mandalore rising from the ashes. Paranoid Solipsist on Twitter says, Axe Woves forgot cruisers have shields. Actually, here you can see the TIE Interceptor crashing into the surface of the ship and the shields crackling. But a few seconds later, another TIE crashes and there are no shield crackles. Likely, the interceptors did what we all do in video games. You target the shield generators first. Now, shield generators are normally located just above the bridge on Star Destroyers, but this light cruiser doesn't seem to have any shield generators in the usual spots. So there's no telling really when the Imperial TIE fighters took out the shield generators. I couldn't find it in the fight. Point is, they did, the shields weakened, there were no shields. Extra Rock and Roll asks, please explain what the heck happened to the TIE Interceptors and TIE Bombers after they took out the ships. Did they just let the Mandos go back to the normal life without a fight? Great question. TIE fighters don't have hyperdrive, and these fighters no longer have a base they can return to, or a capital ship they can return to. So the remaining TIEs that weren't taken out by the capital ship would probably call for help. Now, if there were no Imperial ships around, then these TIE fighters would land on the surface before they ran out of fuel. They can't really attack the Mandalorians because they're underground. We also got a few questions about potential Imperial retaliation on Mandalore, and my thought was that this was Gideon's base. The other Imperials have kind of their own thing going on, and they wouldn't see Mandalore as worth the resources to retake. Dan Jones 8132 asks, how did Axe Woves have enough jetpack fuel to make it back to the fleet? A major crux of a previous episode was that jetpacks don't have a lot of fuel. Yes, in the episode The Foundling, they were not able to keep pursuing the creature that stole Ragnar, but we don't actually know how long of a distance they were trying to cover before the jetpacks ran out of fuel. They could have been after this guy for like tens or hundreds of miles. Now granted, the lowest satellites orbiting Earth are 160 kilometers above the surface, so that would potentially be a lot of fuel for him to expend to enter orbit. But when we see Axe Woves on the bridge, we can see the planet's atmosphere. So it's more likely that the ship is at the height of an airplane, which at minimum is about 6 miles over the surface. So I can totally buy that he had enough jet fuel to travel 6 miles. And we had a lot of questions about the aftermath of the episode as well. Steve12 says, so Moff Gideon is definitely not dead, right? Since they showed all those clone tanks. Either the Gideon who exploded was a clone, or they'll reveal that Gideon had other clone labs in the galaxy, so some version of Gideon can return in future seasons. God, I hope he's really dead. The worst thing Star Wars could do is keep bringing characters back from the dead.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Death gives a story consequences. Death gives a story stakes. But Disney is too afraid to kill off intellectual property that could be used in a sequel down the line. As soon as they brought back the Cloning Resurrection and Rise of Skywalker, they undermined every possible consequence of death in the future of this universe. Heck, actors who die in real life can't even stay dead in Star Wars. VR dev Brad asks, they really don't address the issue of how Gideon managed to get full-grown clones so quickly, but I'm starting to think that they're setting up plot elements for adapting parts of the original Thrawn trilogy, i.e. these are Spartan Sparty cloning cylinders. I mean, great, you just answered your own question.
What's a Sparty cloning cylinder?
So in the old Legends continuity, in the Heir to the Empire trilogy, Thrawn discovered the Emperor's hidden cloning chambers on Mount Tantus, or in Mount Tantus, I guess. Now, all of this was written years before the prequels and before the Kaminoans were even created by George Lucas. So the Emperor had these cloning chambers inside of Mount Tantus, which is also in the Bad Batch, and these chambers could grow a clone very quickly, and Thrawn ended up growing like an entire clone army to man this like abandoned fleet that he found. They're really great books, you should read them. So you're right, they probably just adapted these cloning chambers to this story. The Kaminoan clones grew at twice the speed, but maybe Gideon was growing these clones to full size and then like implanting them with memories. I guess we'll never know because his kids are dead.
Man, that's harsh.
Sure is. MJTY Source says, it's been established that Mandalorian second names are surnames like Kryze, Fett, and Vizsla. So why is he Din Grogu and not Grogu Jaren? Yeah, that's a great question. So it seemed like a silly mistake, but consider this. Din Djarin is probably not a native Mandalorian name. Din is from a planet called Akvatina, and he's not from Concordia like I said a few videos ago. Sorry about that.
I was wrong.
So it is likely that when Death Watch took him in, he kept his original name that was native to his planet, and his people have that custom of putting the last name first.
Oh, it all makes sense now.
My Toy asks, IG-11, this is a really long one, it's really good. When we see him as a statue, it is because he blew himself up, taking out like 4 to 6 stormtroopers. So it is the savior of the city, but most of the damage it took is to its legs. The torso and head seem mostly intact. But the purpose of the self-destruct was to prevent the droid manufacturer's software or hardware from being captured, studied, and copied. Yet, the nice personality created by Kuiil shorts out and the original assassin droid programming kicks in. Seems like the bomb didn't work, failing in both destroying the parts and the programming. But the biggest problem was that the bomb was carried, armed, and detonated from the center of his chest. Most of the damage should have been right there in the center mass, but no, it's easily fixable, barely an inconvenience. The real problem here is that he needed a new head. Alright, all very good points, so let me address them one at a time. Like you mentioned, the legs were not able to be recovered because they were melted by lava. So the self-destruct was successful in its purpose. They were not able to recover the manufacturer's software. Just because IG-11 defaulted to assassin mode doesn't mean that you could have recovered any software worth copying. Also, remember that Kuiil did get in there and manipulate his software and gears before this happened. So who knows what changes he made to it that made the self-destruction protocol not work quite as well. And look, when you watch the explosion in slow motion, which by the way, he took out 10 troopers, not 4 to 6. It's like a whole squad. We see the fire emanating and bursting outward in slow motion, but not really melting the chest. So I totally buy that the concussive force would simply push the metal outwards so it could be recovered. Greef Karga would have wanted to honor him as a hero, but not really because he saved the town, but because he saved Greef Karga. I could also believe that Karga would want to recover every non-melted piece so he could rebuild IG-11 to help protect the city. Now, that obviously wasn't possible, so instead, he became a statue. And actually, I like that the chest became Grogu's cockpit. It was once a source of death, but now it has become a cradle of life. Dick MacLuke asks, does Grogu connect with the mythosaur when he looks into the water? Yes, it's like how he bonded with the Rancor in the Book of Boba Fett. After training with Luke, he seems to use the Force for connection and defense. The big theory going around, though, is that Grogu is going to be the one to ride the mythosaur and will become the true ruler of these people for hundreds of years to come. And we had lots of questions about the season as a whole.
Person?
Yes.
I'm in jail again.
Stop it. Snow on Twitter asks, what happened after Kelleran and Grogu left Coruscant? Now, I'm pretty sure we'll see this in a future flashback or a comic book, or maybe in the animated Tales of the Jedi show. But I'm just going to take a guess, and you guys let me know what you think down in the comments, that the Inquisitors were going to catch up to Kelleran, so he left Grogu with a trusted ally or a nice family, and then that nice family was killed by the Nikto that we saw in episode 1. But I think what's interesting here is that Gideon paid bounty hunters to come after Grogu instead of using his own massive Imperial forces. I think this is because the Nikto were going to sell Grogu to Hux for the Necromancer cloning program, but Gideon wanted to undercut Hux to create his own clones on the sly. So he wanted to capture Grogu in a way that didn't connect directly to him, so he outsourced the job. Sakura002 asks, was there a second spy or were we trolled? So I'm actually going to cover this more extensively in a video soon, but the title The Spies was actually referring to the 12 Mandalorians scouting the land. This is a reference to the book of Numbers when Moses sent the 12 tribal chieftains into the wilderness to scout the land. Chagrin Chuck asks, why did we have an entire episode focusing on Dr. Pershing when we never saw him again in the season and his story went absolutely nowhere? Well, you're wrong about his story going nowhere. He starts off like a cheerful ally of the New Republic and he ends basically brain dead. So that is a full complete arc. But yes, this season did expand the world building for the show and the universe, but it did so in a clumsy way. I really liked the Pershing episode because it was a story where like I was engaged with what the character wanted, whereas like we had no idea what Din wanted for most of the season. The Pershing episode was there for a couple of reasons. One, it showed us how inept the New Republic is, which makes me feel better about how easily they were defeated in The Force Awakens. But two, it showed that Gideon had people working for him inside the New Republic. And three, it showed how the new Empire could have have resurrected the Emperor sooner if they hadn't been infighting. Pershing should have been used in Project Necromancer. After all, he was learning how to regrow bodies.
Had simple organ cloning been available on my home world, her death would have been easily preventable.
But instead, Gideon used him for his own selfish solipsist reasons. They also set up Kane as a great future antagonist for the series. Gerald Laboon asks, how did the Mandalorian survivors not know about Moff Gideon having a big-ass base near the Great Forge? And how did Gideon's people never spot the survivors riding around on their sail barge? Well, for one thing, planets are big. That's how they could have missed the refugees. But also, there were too few refugees to care about, they weren't even a threat, and also maybe they did a great job hiding. It's not like the Mandalorian atmosphere was conducive to air patrols or sensors. I mean, after all, we saw that instruments don't really work on the planet's surface. As for them not knowing about the base, they didn't spend their time at the Great Forge or at any of these dead places. They lived in underground farms. Now, it is a little stupid that the Mandalorians don't seem to notice when they run into us like a smooth Imperial corridor, but whatever. It's Star Wars. Ishan Patel asks, how was Gideon able to communicate with members of the Imperial Shadow Council off-world if comms were scrambled for the Mandos because of interference? They obviously used a more powerful signal that had been boosted and relayed to break through the atmospheric interference. We saw this kind of thing in the show Rebels, where the Rebellion would boost the transmitter on Lothal with extra power to break through the Imperial jammers. At Sci-Fi Writer asks, why capture Djarin at the end of Episode 7? Why give him the chance to escape? And when he does escape, why not protect your clones? The clone chamber would have been a great fight location. I agree, that would have been cool. But I mean, look, we talked about this earlier, but it's really just stupid movie villain arrogance. I don't think Gideon knew that Din escaped or that he would, have to run to protect his clones. The real question is, why even take him prisoner?
Yeah, you should have removed his mask in front of everyone, then taken off his head in front of his own son.
Dude, that's dark.
Yeah, the inside has changed me.
And by the way, everyone, if you like our channel, then maybe you'd enjoy some of our Doug t-shirts at our merch store at shopzeroedition.com. We have this Doug Foundling tee, the original trilogy t-shirts, and our Somehow Palpatine Returned, and now on the site, our brand new Wizard tee with Doug sticking his head out of an M1 Starfighter.
I remember those days when I was free and I could put my head out of...
Shopping our merch store is a great way to help support our channel and get Doug some bail money, so check out the link below. Richard Wong has a great question. How did Din sink to the bottom of the living waters faster than Bo could dive to reach him? Also, how could their helmets be pressurized without being connected to any breathable air source? Well, hilariously, Din fell in the water because he accidentally stepped in a deep hole created by an earthquake. Now, there's actually 7 seconds between Din falling and Bo-Katan jumping in because she has to put on her helmet and then dive in. In those 7 seconds, Din could sink like a stone covered in Beskar. And then Bo-Katan spent a lot of time looking for him. I mean, it's a huge cavern after all. As for helmets being pressurized, well, they've always been pressurized. Listen. Same sound Vader's helmet makes. And where's Vader's breathable air source? I don't see any air tanks on him or on the Mandalorians. So it could be that the helmets have filters on them like the Jedi air breathers, or just that the tanks are filled with concentrated liquid oxygen so they're much smaller. Heck, they could actually be using the same source as their flamethrowers. But on a larger point, the reason characters in Star Wars wear masks is because originally they were supposed to help them breathe in space. It's why Luke Starkiller wore a mask in Ralph McQuarrie's original sketches. And Itch2D2 asks if the making of the Mandalorian armor and weapons is such an ancient and specialized skill, not to mention that the Forge on Mandalore wasn't lit, who showed Gideon how to make it on such a large scale? Well, remember, there were Mandalorians who served the Empire. We had Finn Rau and his commandos, and the Saxon brothers Gar and Tiber. Not to mention the numerous Mandalorian houses and clans like Clan Wren who bent the knee to the Emperor. So I'm sure somebody in there knew how to forge Beskar and pass that secret on to the Imperial engineers. Heck, we even saw Beskar bars with an Imperial insignia in Season 1, so somebody knew how to smelt the stuff. Along the same lines, Matt Stir Chief asked, why would Gideon not use up all this Beskar to armor up the droid Dark Troopers in the second season and instead used it all for his troopers, when he claimed that droids were superior? Come to think of it, why didn't the Empire use the Beskar for literally anything during their reign? See, questions like this always remind me of the Tick. When a bartender asks him,
"Ticks are arachnids, they got 8 legs."
He replies,
"How do you know I don't?"
Now, we have no idea what the Empire used the Beskar for or how much of it they were able to use. My guess is that it was incredibly hard to shape and that without certain knowledge they couldn't mass produce it. In fact, maybe Beskar just simply can't be mass produced because of the techniques used to create and shape it. Now, as for the droid troopers, I'm guessing that making droids out of Beskar is just incredibly difficult because droid parts are so intricately stitched together. Probably having a heavy Beskar shell also means they would require an enormous amount of power, and we already saw that the Dark Troopers' main weakness is that they took forever to power up. Also, hell, what happens if the droids rebel and go all Skynet? You want like evil robot Beskar troopers attacking you on the bridge? No way. Publius 2K4 asks, who the hell forged all that Beskar armor for the stormtroopers? So look, it could have been a Mandalorian sympathizer, but really, my guess is that the Empire just gave it a shot themselves, and the Beskar armor just wasn't as effective. We see that when the Beskar troopers are shot with blasters, they seem to feel the impact a lot more than the Mandalorians do. The armor was probably shoddy workmanship because they don't know any of the inside trade techniques that we've seen the armorer employ. Ed Zonum asks, Tiva discovers Beskar in the ship that was transporting Moff Gideon. The implication was that a Mandalorian helped him escape. They never resolved this. Yes, they did. Gideon has stormtroopers that wear Beskar. They were the ones who helped him escape. And let's move on to some questions about Mandalorian history and technology. Rogue Leader 7843 says, in the 6th episode of Season 3, Axe Woves tells Bo-Katan that Din Djarin is not 1 ounce of Mandalorian blood, making him not a true Mandalorian and unfit to possess the Darksaber.
A misguided zealot possesses the blade. One, I might add, who has not 1 drop of Mandalorian blood in his veins.
Bo-Katan responds to him saying that he took the creed and is therefore a Mandalorian like the rest of them.
Din Djarin took the creed and chose to walk the way, just as our ancestors did.
So does that mean that in the Clone Wars, if Maul had just simply sworn the creed, Bo-Katan would have followed Maul instead of trying to bring him down? Man, trying to understand Mandalorian ideologies is a loser's game. They have so many different beliefs and sects. It really is like the multitude of different beliefs within Judaism. That being said, we do see this same split between Mandalorians and the Clone Wars. Almec just as Jango Fett, saying,
Jango Fett was a common bounty hunter. How he acquired that armor is beyond me.
Almec was one of the new reformed Mandalorians, and Jango was a foundling from Concordia. This was also a way for Almec to say that all the clone troopers were also not Mandalorians or of Mandalorian blood. Now, I don't think that Maul could have done anything to make Bo-Katan follow him. She never trusted him, and he'd already choked her once. And she and Pre Vizsla were already planning to betray Maul. And also, it's heavily implied that Bo-Katan was in love with Pre Vizsla, or at least they had a really strong bond. So, after Maul killed him, she never could have let a monster like that take her sister's throne. Ragnar Fan 01 says, I noticed that when Ragnar took the creed in Season 3, Episode 1, it included a promise to not remove his helmet. Pretty sure that line was missing from the creed in Episode 8. Did the creed change? Did the Children of the Watch officially lighten up even for their own members? You know what? They might have changed the creed. But I think that if they had changed the rules, then Din would have had his helmet off at the end of the episode because it was like just him and Grogu around. So maybe from now on, they just omit that part of the oath from all the Mandalorians because they say it's your personal choice to take off the helmet or not, depending on what sect of Mandalorians you want to join. And on ScreenCrush.com, our editor-in-chief Matt Singer wrote a piece with a few other unanswered questions that I'm going to try to take a crack at. It's a great piece, I recommend you read it. Why did Din and Grogu reunite in the Book of Boba Fett? Presumably because all these shows are telling one big story and because they wanted to sell toys from episodes of The Mandalorian. I have heard though that this was Jon Favreau's decision and not something that Disney forced him to do. Why was everyone so convinced that Mandalore was destroyed? Imperial propaganda. Gideon was in the ISB, so he dealt in lies and rumors to undermine his enemy. Mandalorians are pretty superstitious and easy to fool. Also, I don't think that Bo-Katan's people thought the planet was radioactive, but Din's people did believe that it was cursed.
That planet is cursed. Anyone who goes there dies.
And also cursed by the actions of Bo-Katan. Matt also asked why Bo-Katan didn't try to take the Darksaber back.
Her rule ended in tragedy. They lost their way, and we lost our world.
Honestly, I think that she just reached this point in her life where she realized that Mandalorian infighting was always going to be the downfall of her people.
What pains me is seeing our own kind fight one another time and time again.
Even if she took the saber back, it wouldn't have been enough to unite everyone. Because, after all, not everybody cares about the saber.
To be honest, it means nothing to me or my people.
This is probably why she was so apathetic to the saber in Episode 1.
Wave that thing around, and they'll do whatever you say.
Bo-Katan's real arc was not recapturing the saber, it was realizing that Mandalore could be united once more.
And this blade is all I have to unify our people.
These are the reasons I serve you, Lady Kryze. Your song is not yet written.
And I really liked that they didn't put the importance on an object. Instead, it made the story about Mandalorians as a whole, learning to put aside their differences and come together. Hey Doug, did you ever finish building that trampoline city?
Yeah, thanks to Rocket Money, I saved enough for 11 trampolines. 11!
Good for you, man. And just a reminder to save more and spend less, check out Rocket Money with our link in the description or click this QR code. But we want to hear from all of you. What do you think of this? Let me know down in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.